violation, this flagrant abuse. In Mabaruma, the week before I went in, 7 ministers flew in with huge entourages using state resources. First Lady went twice, the President once, then another 5 ministers flew in these areas. It's the same thing happened in Bartica. 13 ministers went in there, different trips over and over, using state resources, but Lethem was the same thing. In those hinterland communities, I estimate from what I've heard that easily they would have spent about $50 million of state resources to campaign in those areas in the hinterland. At least 50 million. And this is why when we questioned at budget time the large sums of money that were going into some ministries, social cohesion, etc., they were very delinquent in giving us answers, very vague. So are we going to see in the report, of the observer's report, question about this flagrant violation of state resources, the abuse, not just a normal use, because as I said before, if the president travels, nobody bothers with that too much, even if he campaigns. But here you have 13 ministers and 7 ministers and all of them flying in. Just 2 weeks before the elections, they had not gone there. The people told me in the 7-8 months they had been in office, but in the 2 weeks, we've heard about the handing out of vouchers in Bartica. I've asked for a couple of copies of the vouchers, handing out of vouchers a week before the elections. 1 week, in the same week of the elections. So that's the next thing. We have heard on the campaign people saying, don't vote for this group because they're not going, if they win, we're in power now. They're not going to get any resources. Now, this is threatening the electorate that if they freely exercise their franchise, that they choose a group that they think can best represent their community, that they will, if they choose the wrong group, that is a group not sympathetic to APNU or not APNU AFC, they will be starved of resources coming from ministers. Now, will we see that in the Observer reports too? And then this whole issue about electronic voting. I've seen the Private Sector Commission said that they will support electronic tabulation. But the tabulation does not solve the problem. The problem in the last elections took place because of partisan presiding officers. We have not resolved this issue about a transparent process for hiring presiding officers and election day officials. And that is why the only way that you can avoid that, the capricious action of partisan presiding officers and returning officers, etc., is to ensure that their role is minimized in the electoral process and in the polling stations. And electronic voting and tabulation, a system, dual system for electronic voting that is electronic with a paper trail, so it could be audited, and then electronic tabulation will help to do that. That's the only way that you can address this issue comprehensively. Because if the stealing takes place before the tabulation is done, even if you're tabulating electronically, then you're tabulating flawed results. You have to address the problem of stealing. And so we hope, I mentioned the observer groups, that they are not going to report just on polling day activities, that they undertook the task of being observers. And observers have to do much more than just talk about polling day activities. These are just some of the issues I wanted to talk about. I'm not going to go on much longer. I wish to thank all of the PPP supporters, the volunteers, the many people who worked across the country to get this victory. It was a huge victory for the PPP. It reinforced the fact that we have done well in our tenure. It was the low turnout in many APNU areas is a sign that people are very unhappy with this concept of the good life that a few people seem to enjoy. And because, as I said before, the government still lives in this make-believe world, this cocoon that everyone is doing well. I've gone across the Essequibo Coast, seen the suffering in many communities, in PPP communities as well as APNU communities. Ordinary people are hurting in many, many areas. Many, many areas. People in the city too. And that's why I think that after the big enthusiasm of the 2015 elections, the turnout was so low in the city too, because people were concerned about this. I saw someone in the first Stabroek Art News article where they spoke about how much this government has done in such a short period. You know, they have done Mandela Avenue, cleaned it up and cleaned up the city a bit. And I must confess it's true, and the government should get credit for it. But it seems, what seems to be lost on many people is how it's been done. And there is absolutely no transparency. It's as though you can spend money anyhow once it's not spent by the PPP and once you like the outcome. So the 800 million that's been spent in the city, we have not seen a single public advertisement for any of those contracts. So it's okay though. And secondly, the huge write-offs that were given on taxes. We don't know who got these write-offs, how it was done. There's no transparency about that, but that's okay too. And it's just boils down to two different philosophies. When the PPP had to fix the city, you couldn't drive around the city. So we embarked on a project, not to say that the city had to do it. About 25 million US we spent on building roads in Camberville, in Kitty, rebuilding Main Street, rebuilding Sheriff Street, rebuilding Robb Street, Norton Street, Sheriff Street, roads that were impassable. But we fixed those. We put in the street lights, we bought pumps to the city, we built a new dump site. The landscape of the city has changed under the PPP. The number of buildings that have gone up, the economic activities in the city, the number of vehicles, traffic jams, etc. That is what we're about. It is about progress. It is about economic activities. It's about jobs. The call centers that are going up here now that would hire a couple thousand people just down the road, that was built under the PPP. That is what we're about. The APNU's concept is about building more monuments in the city. Every week it's about a monument, cleaning up some areas on Mandela Avenue, and with a question, we don't know, not the back road there, we don't even know how they're raising the money. Can any member of the media tell us who is raising the money and where it's going to, which account it's going to? But we don't know that, but that's fine. They get credit for cleaning some canals, and they should get credit for that, and building monuments. That's what the credit is for. Under the PPP, it was expansion. Now in this city, the real estate market is dead. You call any real estate agent, it's dead. People are not going to building, etc. Now, it's two different philosophies of development. And so my fear is that we may very well have a clean city, but largely, but no economic or very little economic activities in the city. Very little economic activities, but that's a different matter. I do not think we competed effectively in the city, in Linden, and in some other areas in New Amsterdam. We will change that. The PPP will hit the ground in Linden, in New Amsterdam, in Georgetown. We will go to all the communities, because even APNU supporters, and explain to them why we have a better plan for change, developing this country. I've said it before, from tomorrow, our work is, in fact, it has started already. We're now looking past local government elections. These areas were won. Our councillors must act in a manner that they are respectful of people, serve their best interests. That's an instruction we're giving to our councillors. But at the national level, we are focusing on the party, bringing in more young people, more women. We will work in our base, in our strongholds, to strengthen the party. And we will work in APNU strongholds too, to convince people there that the PPP has the best interests of all of Guyana at heart. And so the work starts in those areas. I must confess, we did not compete effectively in these areas. Our campaign was lackluster in many of the areas, the municipal areas, and we have to change a lot of that. Thank you very much. Yes, sure.
Mr. Jagdeo for Cameroon News Source. You spoke about your estimation, 50 million in state resources used for campaign. I heard about the flights and all of that, but I just wanted to get a better understanding of your assessment. If you could point me to some more facts so that I can see how you arrived.
Yeah, sure. What they look at, the guys did that estimation for me. The number of ministers, the cost for flights, the cost per flights alone, with the number of trips made into the interior. A normal charter would be like about close to $1 million. So based on the charters and the large entourages that went in and stuff like that, that's how they estimate. It could very well be an underestimate. It could very well be underestimated. But somebody needs to look into this. That's what I'm asking. Yes, please.
All right, Chris. Off of the general team of local organization.
Yeah. I have not been very fully apprised of the other issues, but yes, please go. If there is any issue that I'm not familiar with, I will tell you. Go ahead. But are you clear on local? Let's finish the local government elections issue first. We have clarity. I notice the government is very silent on this issue. Nor, like in Wim, Nagamutu, he was there all day trying to round people up to go. I think he even went into one of the polling stations unauthorizedly, but he got wiped out. His family contested there. He got wiped out in Wim. It's a pity they didn't contest in places like Blackbush, Poland, Crabwood Creek, and the other areas too. And even in Potentia, we had not won that NDC, I think, ever, or since 1970s. We won that the NDC. I suspect a lot has to do with Wales, the heartless position, the unconscionable position of this government on the Wales, the closure of the Wales sugar estate, that it will affect everyone, APNU supporters as well as PPP supporters, Guyanese, it will affect them. And this is, I hope that maybe this would lead them to rethink some of their strategies on the ground, that where they think that they're doing extremely well. But that policy, it's not just the policy of closure, but they have nothing else to offer to people as an alternative. And secondly, the manner, the callous, uncaring manner in which it was done. It was sprung on the people overnight, contrary to their own Commission of Inquiry report that they now distance themselves from. So this is absolutely important. I've noticed that we don't have the traditional, jubilation from the government because no doubt they have assessed the results themselves, and they have seen that close to 30,000 people voted more against them than they had. Yeah, if we're done with local government issues, yeah, please.
Don't you think that the GCOM should have, in terms of the election results, they should have had some official declaration, given the complexity of the result, the elections, we haven't had it in 20 years, because many IDs still don't understand, and posting it on the website, it's very complicated and to read the figures and so on.
Yeah.
Don't you think that there should have been an official declaration by elections?
The nature of the elections is that the results are declared at the local level. But GCOM has an obligation. They can't just pass it off to people to do much more. And even a meeting with the entire media community, just to explain how they're going to post the results and explain the results would have helped a lot in clarifying many of the issues, etc. So I do think that there is a bigger role for GCOM. The deficiencies in GCOM, we seem to be sweeping them all under the carpet every single time. And based on this almost arrogant way of, oh, we did it, we just hired a new PR person, although the person has been there for 1 month only, and we had it right. It's almost like that they don't understand what we're talking about is the system. The system must work in a way where people have confidence in the system, not necessarily individuals, and that it's objective and it's user-friendly and that it is helpful to all of our citizens. And that we don't have now. So I do agree they should have done more, but I think the laws require not the headquarters to declare, but the declarations have to be made at the local level.